here I am.
How come you two ladies never age?
Hi, honey.
And I'm getting old.
How are you? Drugs. I don't know.
Look what I have behind. Look what I have behind me, Isola.
Wow. Who are they? The McGuire sisters? Who are they?
The McGuire sisters, that's who they are.
Did you have to fight very hard about that blonde wig, Claudia?
Well, actually, it was designed for somebody else, and then it just existed. So when I finally came into the production, there was no choice but to be a blonde. So, yeah.
So is it true? Do they have more fun?
Yes.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Hey, but you will notice, look at my skin tone.
Yeah, I noticed
I look
that.
like a ghost because I couldn't be black.
Yeah, I remember that. Do you know, I remember that, and I remember that for Rheingold. That's what I really remember it for, and I remember being just astonished. Yeah.
I mean, that was in the 70s, the 80s.
It was in the 80s.
Yeah, by the mid or late 80s, I could be African American, but before that, but everybody, I mean, Price, Verrett, Bunbury, everybody had to put on a little, was it Max Factor? You know, anything that was exposed, you had to be covered up or something. I don't know. So
yeah.
I remember very well Verrett singing Tosca, and especially it was very visible on the telecast. Very visible on the telecast, and it really is. It's so unfortunate.
You look like a ghost.
Yeah.
But you know what, Isola? You know what? In a way, there's a positive regarding all this. This is archives to show what kind of discrimination was going on at the time.
I want to say that in some ways we haven't moved an inch, but in many ways we have really moved ahead, especially in the arts. I think that it's especially in music theater. We have great diversity now in music theater, and we waited a long time. So it's so necessary and it's so slow.
Well, and you notice, and you're right. I mean, there is more diversity in musical theater. I mean, they're trying to with opera, but there's more diversity. But what people have stood up against is the awards programs. So the people aren't being nominated or they aren't winning. And so that is changing too, because people are saying, what? Let's go. And these wheels grind slowly.
Yes.
Very slowly. I was in Palm Beach. This was the late 80s, maybe 88. I was there with my first husband, so maybe I came back in my second husband. But anyway, and so in 88, I stayed at this small hotel that was owned by a Jewish couple. And the country clubs and all of the kind of very posh places in Palm Beach were restricted. And so we would drive by. They had a Gucci Cadillac. You remember when designers, these fashion designers designed luxury cars? Well, they had a Gucci Cadillac. And we would drive around Palm Beach, and his wife would say, "Oh, isn't that a lovely place?" He said, "No, it's not lovely," because they wouldn't allow Jews or blacks there. When at one of the rehearsals, I think Rossignol was conducting, I forget, but anyway, we had a rehearsal. They canceled the rehearsal so we could go to the Flagler Museum for chamber music. So we were there, and then they had a big party afterwards, a big dinner. And at the table I was sitting at, the guy who was at that time the owner of the Indiana Pacers was on one side. The guy that was the district attorney for the state of Florida, or whatever county that was, who actually prosecuted Ted Bundy, was on my right. And he loved opera. So he was, he was like a super in the opera. And Mitzi Newhouse was also at the table. And she was kind of far away from me, and she was like, I don't know, she was maybe 90 years old, 100 years old. But she had her keeper with her, this lady, an African-American woman. And this woman invited me and my husband to have lunch with them at their country club. Now, Mitzi was so frail, she couldn't say, you couldn't hear her, but I can read lips. And she said,
you froze.
To the country. We went to the country club anyway. Now, this was in the 80s, and this is Mitzi Newhouse. So these kinds of things, and I live in Arizona. So, I mean, this is like cowboy country. It's kind of wild here. This kind of thinking it's been drummed into people. It has been drummed into all of us. And the idea that we are not all created equal is something that people have to, we are created equal, and people have to get over it, whatever it is. And, it's just, it takes a while, but it's like the sun coming up in the east. Get over it.
The whole diversity idea in Broadway, I never thought it was prominent until just recently, when they're making headlines about having the first Black lead in The Phantom of the Opera.
Well, it's even worse than that. And I was with a historian from Harvard. I'm so sorry I can't remember her name, but she was in Chautauqua, and she was going to give a lecture about Hamilton. And she said that she was appalled, and I was appalled as well, that the women in Hamilton were all light-skinned.
Yes.
Were no dark-skinned women in the leads. And I would send my students who were sensational, but if they weren't light-skinned, they didn't get the part. And now that has moved on to a better venue. But it is such a struggle. It is such a struggle. And
well, do you remember this? This movie was made in the 80s. It was made by Spike Lee, and it was called School Days.
Yeah.
And it was about a Black college and the fraternities and sororities. And there were the sororities and fraternities that had light-skinned African Americans versus the fraternities and sororities that had African Americans. So this kind of thing has trickled down into our community too. I mean, that's still, the people with the lighter skin, and good hair, and all of that. This is what the 60s was all about. Black is beautiful. And so I think that is coming roaring back too. And it's a shame that we're still talking about this and that we still have to deal with this. But I don't even think it is about race. I think it is about people and how they view themselves, how they see themselves. And if they have a good feeling about themselves that is based on more than just things that are superficial. But that's what we live in a world that has a very short attention span. We want things instantly. We stand in front of the microwave and say, hurry up. And so it is hard to develop those kind of character traits that are necessary for reason, for sanity. People are generally kind of lazy. They don't want to do it. They want, I mean, but never mind. I'll stop.
No, well, I just want to bring up one other point. Isola, you and I have talked about this. I was friendly with the late, great Seth McCoy. And Seth made his Met debut when he was 50 in that production of The Magic Flute. And Isola, you were the third lady in that go around. And it was with Leona Mitchell as Pamina.
Right.
And he was way over his prime. I mean, it was wonderful that he did it. It was really, really wonderful that he did it, and he was there for 2 seasons. But again, should that have been the reason he was there, or should his talent been the reason he was there? And
I don't know. I mean, however way it happens, I think it's good. We would like to think that it would be on his merits. But again, character, developing a character that is high-minded. I mean, it wouldn't make any difference if it was, plumbing. I mean, remember the great Arthur Ashe?
Yeah.
He wrote a book before he died. He wrote a book about Black athletes. And he made this observation. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But the observation was that the sports that African Americans had been historically shut out of, there was a baseball league, there was the Harlem Globetrotters that are still around as all African American players. These sports that we had been traditionally shut out of, once we were let back in, or as long as we were let in, elevated the sport. Now, that was his opinion. I kind of agree with it. Let's take Leontine Price. When she made her debut in 1961 in Il Trovatore, she said in an interview, it was kind of a long interview, but at the end, the interviewer asked her, "Now, Miss Price, do you ever get depressed?" And she thought about it and she said, "No. When I get depressed, I simply play my ovation from my debut." It was 45 minutes. So it's interesting because it's not like that audience had never heard this opera before, right? And she was probably one of 3 people, Black people in the whole place. She's on stage. They hadn't heard it like that. And it just, spontaneously just got people to their feet. 45 minutes. But the other debutante that night was Corelli. And he was hopping mad. He had to wait 45 minutes before he could take his solo out. that can happen.
I love that Arthur Ashe book. And he says in that book that he retired. Of course, he was in poor health, but he said he retired because it was such a burden for him to have to represent his sport and his race.
Right.
It was just too much of a burden. I think of that all the time. And I do think that we have moved to a better place when you consider the Williams sisters.
Yes, Coco Gauff.
Coco Gauff, oh my gosh.
She made it to the French Open final. That's a very big thing.
Almost did it.
Yes.
Will. There will be another, and she said, "I'll be back."
Yeah.
There will be another moment, and she will. But so hard. I said once to my friend, Marietta Simpson, I said, Serena's mother always looks so serious. And she said, "Can you imagine what it was like raising those girls?"
Mm-hmm.
What she had to go through in order for them to be where they are, So, yeah.
Well, I guess that really kind of leads me to where I want to go now, and that is both of yours trajectory um, to the Met. Claudia, you made your debut on February 12th, 1981, and until when you left in 1989, you had 193 performances, and I think that is very impressive. Really, very
Thank
impressive. So now you're from Pennsylvania. How did an Italian girl from Pennsylvania make it across the border to the Met?
You know, I never even thought about singing at the Met. I always wanted to sing at City Opera because they were a team. They seemed like a team. I wanted to be part of a team that made opera. They never wanted me, is what happened. But
Wow.
I went to Santa Fe as an apprentice, which is where I met Isola, and we were doing. Then I went back as an artist, and we were doing the original 3-act production of Lulu. And the next place that the production was going to be done was the Met. So the Met came to hear it, and they didn't have anyone to cover the 3 roles that I did. Actually, I think Hilda Harris was singing them. So without an audition, I got hired to come and cover them. And it was, as you can imagine, it was really an honor. Then Jean Kraft was scheduled to sing the page in Salome at the Met. She had just sung Herodias in Santa Fe, and we had gotten to know each other. And of course, she didn't want to sing the page. She had just sung Herodias, and she said to me, "What are you doing when this is over?" And I said, "Well, I'm going back out, regionally." And she went to the administration and asked them to give me the role of the page. Then I had a scheduled debut. Then Ariel Bybee, this is to tell you what wonderful colleagues we had. Ariel Bybee had carpal tunnel syndrome and had to have her hands operated on. And the Met called me and said, "If you can learn Second Lady in like a week," I think it was a week, "you can make your debut as Second Lady." I said,
And we could put you in a blonde wig.
Can't do it. So then my agent got a call that said, "We're not getting," Maestro Levine says, "Miss Catania can't be cast in anything else until he hears her." I had never done a debut. I had never sung for Jimmy. And there I was kind of like moving up in the house. So that's kind of how that happened. But I was in love with music theater. I never expected to sing opera. And I certainly never expected to sing at the Met.
Wow. And now, Isola, your trajectory from a little girl from Illinois.
Okay. Well,
Wait, I have to tell you, you made your debut October 15th, 1977 as in Eugene, Onegin. And we only found out years later when I was going through a lot of old programs that I actually was at her debut.
Oh, that's
with Cheryl Milnes, Teresa Zilisgara, and Nikolai Geda. I mean, excuse me, really? And then you sang until 1991 there with 505 performances, which is great. But I have to tell you, ladies, just so you know, your colleague Loretta DeFranco has 929 performances. I mean, I don't know what that woman did, but everything. But I know the story, but why don't you tell our audience your trajectory to the Met?
Well, it happened late one night. No, it happened in the afternoon. I was singing in the chorus of the Chicago Symphony Chorus, and we were preparing the Verdi Requiem. So Georg Schulte was conducting, And the woman that ran the chorus, Margaret Hillis, would have, let's see, a soprano, an alto, a tenor, and a bass sing the lead-ins for the chorus. So they would have a sense of continuity when the artists got there. So kind of like, you know, the classic story, the mezzo got sick for the final dress rehearsal. And they called because I was her understudy. And there are certain things that you just know how to sing. Nobody teaches it to you, nobody coaches you, you just understand it. That was the Verdi Requiem for me. And so I was actually not home. I was up on the north side of Chicago, got back to Orchestra Hall, met Schulte at the stage door. He whistles through the part, because he can't say, I mean, he was whistling through the part and had me finish the phrases for the mezzo. So he knows that I know the role or the part. He was satisfied, and then he introduces me to the other soloists. On my right was Leontine Price, my idol since I was 11 years old. I was 25 at the time. On my left was Luciano Pavarotti. Hello. And then on his left was a young bass by the name of Gwen Howell. So they started, started the music, the Kyries, and you know the piece. So close to the opening is the Liber Scriptus for the mezzo. When I finished it, Price grabs my right hand, Pavarotti grabs my left hand, and Schulte's right in my face with the baton and says, very good, very good. What I got from that experience, I mean, it was like I was on cloud nine. I could do no wrong, because as you were right, Claudia, good colleagues, generous colleagues, they lift you up. They lift you up to their level. I didn't feel as if I was in the wrong place, out of my depth, in the wrong, in the wrong zip code. I was where I belonged. And that was in the afternoon. In the evening, I had another rehearsal. I got home very, very late. And Schulte's secretary at that time was Peter Jonas. You know, he was the guy that was married to Lucia Pop, was her husband. Well, my phone was ringing off the hook, and so I answered it, and it was Peter, and he was yelling at me, "Why are you out so late? You might have to sing tomorrow." And oh, by the way, Schulte really liked your singing, and we're doing Die Fliegende Holländer next year, and there is a recording involved. These are the dates. Are you available? And I said, well, let me look at my very busy schedule and see if I get back to you. I said, well, yes, I'm available. And so on the strength of that afternoon, my career got started. Yvonne Minton, who I was covering, she was fine. So she sang all of the performances. But on the strength of that afternoon, Decca London Records called me because they were doing a complete Porgy and Bess in Cleveland. And they wanted me to send them a tape of me. I didn't sing opera. I sang early music. I sang Baroque and Renaissance music. So I sent them a Bach aria, and they hired me. Because once you get past Porgy and Bess, there's like 50 million other people in the cast. So I go to Cleveland, and I see and meet all of these Black opera singers. Leona Mitchell, now Sir Willard White, Francois Clemens, Barbara Conrad, Arthur Thompson, Florence Quivar. I said, where did all these people come from? So we did the performance at Blossom, and then we did the recording. Now, what I didn't know until about 7 or 8 years ago, that recording was done in 75, and it was released probably in 76. It won the Grammy that year for Best Opera Recording. Porgy and Bess is like a sure shot. It's going to get a Grammy, no matter what. But anyway, so we did Dutchman the next year. And I'm praying through these performances, Claudia, because I really don't know how to sing. No idea. No idea. I'm praying to Jesus, help me. And so I'm at Carnegie Hall singing Mary in Dutchman. And Decca London Records takes the cast out to dinner to Café des Artistes. Is that still there?
Still there.
Okay. God bless him. I love the Gravlons. But anyway. So Richard Brzezinski comes over to the table that I'm having dinner, and he sits down and he says, you know, good job. And he said, would you like to sing a solo audition for James Levine at the Met? Shouldn't I know foreign languages? Shouldn't I know opera? Shouldn't I know how to sing? Shouldn't all those things come first? And so I said no. And then he repeated it because I guess he thought I misunderstood him. So I go back to Chicago, and a few things happened in that year. I had to make a few decisions. And it's about a year later, and I get a phone call. It's from the Met, and they're asking me, would I like to sing an audition for James Levine? Do you know, I had a ticket to go to New York at that moment because the company was out of New York. That's where all the ballet companies came into Lincoln Center, and I was singing with the ABT. Okay, so I'm singing Les Noces with the ABT, and I sing my audition for Jimmy Levine at Carnegie Hall. Here we go. I sang, it was not good. It was not good at all. And he comes up to the stage and he asks, and I had just fired my teacher, my voice teacher. And he asked, are you studying with anyone? And I said, no. And he said, I think you need this much more. I didn't ask him what that meant. I said, well, thank you, Maestro. So the next day, I went back to my hotel room and I called a friend of mine and I said, I can't believe it. God brought me here and I just blew this audition. And he said, Isola, relax. There was only one person there. And I said, who? He said, God. God was the only person singing. God was the only person listening. Kind of like at the end of the first chapter of Genesis, the beginning of the second chapter. Behold, it was all good. Okay, that sounds good. So the next day I'm in the Met, and you know the place is like a labyrinth. Who do I run into? Jimmy Levine. And I said, oh, Maestro, I'm so sorry about my bad audition. And he said, it's okay. Where are you staying? I want to talk to you before you leave. Well, at the Empire. I said, okay, I'm gonna call you. Well, he never called. And I thought, well, maybe he doesn't like to give bad news in person. I don't like to get bad news in person. It's all good. Well, it's all good. So I'm back in my apartment in Chicago. And I've got the windows open. When I would sing, Claudia, my neighbors would yell out the window, shut up. Okay. So, yeah. So I'm singing Habanera from Carmen and watching TV, and the phone rings. And it's the Met. And they are offering me a grocery list of roles to learn. I'm thinking, okay, this is God. And so I call, this is kind of a long story, but it's interesting. Okay, so I sell all of my furniture and I call my friend in New York. And I say, I need a place to stay in New York that is soundproof because I clearly bother my neighbors. He suggested the Ansonia. So I called them and I talked to the manager and I asked him, I said, I'm going to be singing at the Met in about a month. Do you have any apartments available? And he said, yes. I said, can you hold on to one of them for me? He said, yes. I said, okay, I'll be there. I get to the Ansonia, have nothing. Clothes, scores, books, record player, because they're my roles. I go down to the lobby and I'm foraging for food and I run into a baritone friend of mine. Was going to Stuttgart for 3 years and there were people in the building at the Ansonia. Ben Matthews and Wayne Saunders that had the Opera Ebony. They lived there and they were throwing a Bon Voyage or Auf Wiedersehen party for Curtis. And, you know, good luck, have fun. Well, 3 days later, I'm almost at the end of this. 3 days later, and I'm sleeping on the floor. Claudia, I'm sleeping on the floor. I'm saying, God brought me here. He's going to take care of me. Sleeping on the floor. And I get a call from Curtis, of all people. And Curtis had, what I actually had was a rent control department. And he was going to sublet it for the time he was in Germany. Well, his sublet fell through. And he called me and he said, Isola, do you know anybody that needs any furniture? I said, you don't call anybody else. Bring everything to me. And that's what he did. And so the next thing that happened, so I've got furniture, I have everything. And this is kind of where the story is going to end because it's a long story. So the next thing I have is a rehearsal, a diction rehearsal with Alberta Mazziella. You know, who wore turbans and smoked cigars. Scared to death. She didn't want to hear me sing. She just wanted to hear my pronunciation. Okay. Well, they had to give me a coach real fast. And so then I made my debut 3 months early in Onegin. And then the next thing I know, I'm on TV. And I think that's the end of the story.
I want to tell you about Isola, because Isola was at the Met when I arrived. And I want to tell you about colleagues. And as I'm telling you, I'm welling up a little bit. Isola was the greatest colleague ever in the world. And she said to me, Claudia, listen to everything the director tells you. Listen to everything the conductor tells you. And then when you get on that stage, you come right straight down center stage and sing as loud as you can. I just remember she took all tension out of the fear for me. My debut, you gave me a bottle of First by Van Cleef and Arpels. It was, and it was the most delicious aroma. And I remember that so well. I remember us touring together and having so many laughs and so much fun. And in the Magic Flute, that long interlude in the second, and we would be just dying. And Isola would open my dressing room door every performance, and she would say, remember, Mozart was a genius. I have so many beautiful, wonderful memories of that time. I don't think that exists anymore. I think what you and I had was extraordinary and special and unique. And
Claudia, think of the wonderful artists that were still singing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We were blessed.
Last of the golden age, we had them. We walked down the hall and coming toward us would be Birgit Nilsson or Joan Sutherland or Scotto or Pavarotti or Domingo. We could listen to them all. It was a voice lesson every day.
Can I put in a point there? Because I'm a New York boy. I grew up, going to the Met. So I was very lucky. My first performance at the Met, and I will never forget it, was Hansel and Gretel. Now, my paternal grandfather was a music publisher. He published the music of Rachmaninoff and Fritz Kreisler. So, there was, he had this wonderful subscription, and I will never forget it. The subscription seats were in the orchestra, F2 and 4. You can't beat that. Here I am as a young kid being taken by to go see Hansel and Gretel. This wonderful, wonderful Robert O'Hearn production, which they had for many, many years. It was gorgeous. But I remember very, very well that It was Teresa Stratas as Gretel, Roz Elias as Hansel, and I've even talked to Loretta DeFranco. Loretta DeFranco was the Dew Fairy in that production, and Jean Kraft was the mother, and Franz Allers conducted. And you can't beat that. I was so very fortunate. I heard Macbeth with Martina and Cheryl Mills. Martina Royal, Cheryl Mills. My first ring cycle was with Nielsen, and then I had the pleasure of meeting her after Götterdämmerung because Frances Robinson brought me back to meet her, and there she was, eating herring out of a can and drinking a bottle of Rheingold. I don't think I'll ever forget that. But
Wow.
Scotto, and Claudia, you were on stage for this. Nothing in the world prepared me for Scotto Suor Angelica. Nothing could prepare you for that. Her eyes, and you saw it on the TV, when she saw the miracle at the end, her eyes did not blink. These were master classes. Of course, Leontine Price, John Vickers, Pavarotti, Domingo, and so on and so forth. But you brought up a very good point, Claudia. There was another level. Andrea Vellis, William Fleck, who else? Jimmy Atherton, God rest his soul. Bacha Gottfried Ben David. There was Ariel Bybee. There was this Jean Kraft. There was this other level that in no way was any less important, but they were the stalwarts of the house. They were the foundation for the Met. And nobody touts how important they were. Because you can have and it's important to hear Price and all that. But these guys, they were so important to the running of the Met and getting you all acclimated as well. Am I not correct?
You are correct. And what happened is unfortunate, but it has happened throughout the world. The financial picture of the Met changed. So this group of artists who had perfected and honed their craft as comprimarios and who really felt that was important. It was important for me to be Suzuki. I loved it. It was important. Now, they can't afford that, or they don't want to afford it. So now that whole realm of comprimario singing is gone. And we were all fired in a way, because the financial structure changed. And we had, Isola, you sang a lot of major roles. I don't know whether it touched you as much as some people, but I sang a lot of comprimario roles. And I went to people to study those roles. I went to a Japanese lady to study Suzuki. So overnight, it wasn't so important anymore. The leading people were important, and then they hired young, inexpensive artists to surround. So it just as Tevye says in Fiddler on the Roof, it's a different world, Golda.
Mm-hmm.
Not the world that we knew.
But there's something about those young singers which that I think is a problem now, or not a problem, but I see it. They come out and they want to run and do the larger roles first without building their foundation with some of these other roles and getting their feet wet and getting their stamina. They want to go, and Tishina Vaughn, who Isola, I don't know, you know her too, Claudia. She told me that right at the beginning, they offered her Amneris.
Yeah.
And she went to the rehearsal and said, I'm not ready for this. But she had to be ready for that because that's what they pushed her. And then Azucena. But then she said, you know what? I need the time. I need the time to progress. And that's something I think that young singers don't know right away how to say is no. They're afraid that if they say no, they won't have that tomorrow.
Well, there are two things. Isola, tell me how you feel about this. Number one, because Isola teaches, and I don't find many young singers who are willing to take the journey. They want the result without the journey.
Right.
And it takes a long time to learn to sing. It's not an overnight thing, and it's not an intellectual academic process. It's a journey with a teacher, with a relationship. They're kind of not interested in that. So, and now I forget what the second thing was because I'm old. But that was the. They really are not interested in that journey.
Well, Claudia, I absolutely agree with you. And it's funny, the people that are willing, I mean, all right, how is it? There are people that want the life, but don't have the talent. There are the people that have the talent, but they don't want the life. And then there are the people that have the talent and can have the life. Character. It boils down to character. Because there are lots of people with good voices. Someone asked me recently, do they think that American singers are not as good as the singers from Europe or wherever? And I said, no, it is just our popular culture has infiltrated everything. We don't get those sounds in our ears. We don't have it in our soul. We have, the second, maybe in the top 20 exports out of the United States is our popular culture. Music, movies, technology as well, of course. But you haven't lived until you've heard rap in Farsi or Hindi or Korean. And so this is not, I'm not saying that these cultures don't have good opera singers because the Koreans have a lot of good opera singers. I don't know about, in Tehran, but it is the culture itself, the art form itself requires something that, a technique, a vocal technique that, because I believe in bel canto. I think to produce the voice, that is easy. That is dominated by the head register. But because it is so resonant, it gives you it fills in the formants, fills in that whole chord. And so you're not pushing the voice. And I said this to Stephen yesterday, I said, I think Caruso changed a lot for tenors. I don't know what changed it for sopranos and mezzos and basses, but I think he changed it for tenors because he sounded like a baritone. Mm-hmm. So people wanted, other tenors wanted to sound like that. That wasn't their voice. That was his voice. Mm-hmm. And he would also crack on high notes. So maybe he was doing something that's kind of screwy. But it is a way of thinking about the music. People are so aggressive. And they talk about, I want to hit that note. This is not a contact sport. This is art. You want it to be full. You want it to sound good. Don't attack it. Learn how to sing and easy, and let it happen. Don't make it happen. But we live in a society where everything is instantaneous, or if it isn't instantaneous, we get mad. You're right. They don't want to go the journey, but it has to be explained to them. But even from their own experience, they know it's going to take a while.
But isn't it? Well, wasn't there anything better for both of you than standing on that stage and you standing next to Pavarotti or Sutherland in the quartet from Rigoletto, Claudia, you standing next to Renato Scotto, talk about Madame Butterfly, okay? Or even Gwyneth Jones, who you sang with, or you know, I'm going to tell you, where you guys didn't appear on stage, or you know, where you were Ungeboren in Die Frauen Schatten, but you were the Ungeboren of Leonie Rieseneck, James King, Christian. Well, I don't know. Christian Ludwig did it back when you guys did it, but Ursula Schroeder-Feinen, Nielsen, Martin. I'm sorry, there has to be something said to standing. I mean, you know, you talked about colleagues. Isola twisted my arm to sing, and I'm not a singer. I'm a conductor, director. I'm not a singer. She twisted my arm to do Zuniga for something she did in Arizona. And I said, I don't sing. Well, she forced me to do it. I went out there and I told her, if anything, I'm going to sing in tongues because no one's going to understand a word I said. And the main reason I did it is I wanted to see Isola rehearse. I wanted to see her work. And it was, for me, it was a masterclass to watch her work. Now, I'm dropping a bombshell that hasn't been announced yet, but I'm actually repaying that kindness because our company's concert opera is doing Le Nozze di Figaro, and Isola is going to be doing Marcellina. She's coming to New York to do concert Marcellina with the aria. And so I get a chance, because I will be conducting, and I will get a chance to see her work again. And that's what I'm hoping that those singers around her will learn from. And I'm sure you both have some wonderful stories about being around the singers and watching them work and watching their ethic of how they work.
There was nothing like singing at the Met. There was nothing before it. There was nothing after it. I actually said to Fred Plotkin last night, I love my life. And I love teaching, and I am blessed with students who are, frankly, some of them superstars. But there was nothing like standing on that stage. It's an indescribable feeling. And then when you're standing next to Pavarotti or Mary or Otto, you absolutely are in the heaven of opera. You know? So so when you say what was it like, there was nothing like it.
Right. Yeah. It's a rarefied atmosphere, and it's inspiring because, and you're learning. How do you learn anything? You learn it by repetition and by hearing it. And so you hear these great voices, you hear how they're produced. You try to incorporate that into your own singing. You try to understand exactly what they're doing. Before opening night of Rigoletto, I've read this, now maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but that Verdi held very closely, questo, quella, and la donna è mobile, because he knew that in Venice, those gondoliers would be singing up and down the Grand Canal before opening night. Right. And he didn't get that spoiled. But those guys were not singers, they're gondoliers. But because that is their culture, that's what they hear. Yep. So this is what happens with our singing. We sing opera like it's, like it's Beyonce. It isn't. And so to get that kind of, those sounds, that gorgeous resonance, how to achieve that. So I think the greatest singers on earth are alive today. They just need to be shown how to get the best results from their voices. That's all.
I think
Adele, I don't want to pick on Adele. I think Adele is cool. I think Adele has got a soulful sound and great musical talent. But Adele has had 2 vocal surgeries. Adele doesn't really sing above, E5. How is that possible? You cannot force your voice. Don't scream. Okay, I'll stop.
Claudia, tell me about your teaching technique when it comes to people on Broadway. You and I talked a little bit about some of your students who are currently on Broadway stages right now. One hopes, although I know that's changing, that opera singers, especially in your days that you were there, did not have microphones, or we believe they did not have microphones, and whereas Broadway singers do have microphones. What is there a do you have a change in your technique, or what do you do? How do you approach that with your singers?
I'm going to tell you my philosophy, which is maybe unpopular with a lot of music theater teachers who have formed a kind of idea about how it's a different art form. I teach singing. So when I teach music theater singers, I teach them the same classical technique that I would teach an opera singer. The apparatus may be different, but the technique is the same. Then stylistically, they may change that to accommodate whatever the singing need be. But my singers can sing. And I will say this to you, Uzo Aduba sang for Mike Nichols for the movie Masterclass, and she had to sing Lady Macbeth's aria.
Mm-hmm.
Came in, and she was classically trained at BU. She came in to my studio to work on it, and she sang for me. And I'll never forget my accompanist, Letitia Ruccolo, turning and looking at me and going. And when she sang for him, he couldn't believe it. She is a great singer. The fact that she has decided to be an actress instead, or sometimes instead, is her choice. But it doesn't mean, and I think it keeps the voice fresh and alive. So the people I teach, I want them to sing well into their 60s and 70s, like we learned to sing. Yvonne McFerrin, who was Hamilton, he never missed a performance. The fact that he's Bobby McFerrin's son was also cool. He really knows how to sing.
Well, let's be very honest. All they have to do is go to company and wait for the end of Act 2 and listen to Patti LuPone sing "Here's to the Ladies Who Lunch." I don't care. That is a masterclass in just sitting there and watching a master do it.
Couldn't believe it. She sounds amazing. She sounds like...
And that's right. And she turned around and she said, she got a lot of people upset, but she said, I don't miss a performance. And that is something that these kids get in their contract. Oh, I need to have 1 in 5 off. Oh, no. She said, you are hired to sing and to do your work.
I have a student in company, Greg Hildreth. He plays Peter. And he said...
And he's wonderful. He's wonderful.
And he said about her, he said, Claudia, she's older than all of us, but she does everything that we do. She moves the sets.
Mm-hmm.
She's there every night with us. She does everything we do. That's what I love about Broadway. That's what I love. that captured me. It's why I'm in that end of the business.
So what was it like being in Most Happy Fella? You worked with Spiro Malas.
Darling, it was horrible. And I'll tell you why.
Oh, well, all right. That just derailed where I was going.
It was a very poorly written part, very poorly directed. And Frank Rich killed me in the New York Times. So for the next year and a half, I did that role and never missed a performance, because that's what Isola and I were taught to do.
Mm-hmm.
But when it was over, I retired.
Well, look, I just went out. I went out. You can see I disappeared, but I bought it. I bought the because I'm interested. I love Frank Lesser, so I had never heard the entire score, so I'm very interested. And also, it was a very interesting orchestration. It was Lesser's approved 2-piano orchestration.
Yes. The thing that enabled that production to happen was that Spiro was a bass. The part was written for a baritone.
Right.
But because it was that 2-piano orchestration, we could transpose it so that he could do it. And he was ideal for the part. So they created around him that particular story. And it was a great production. It never had Broadway orchestras hated us because we took work away from many people. But it was tough for me because that's what happened. And I was used to the operatic way, which is the director tells you what to do, and you learn to do that and make it work. And I tried to make it work, and it never really worked. But I will say to you again, I never canceled a performance. I was there every night because Isola and I learned how to do that. That's what we did, and but anyway, Frank Rich, who I have never met, but I would love to meet because I have some things to say to him. I will say I was destroyed, so I retired, but it opened up the world of teaching for me. And I'm grateful for that. So that's what it was like to be in the Most Happy Fella. I don't know what you were hoping I would tell you.
No, I mean, it's just that, again, it's a different world. It's a very, very different world. I see what's going on now with some productions. I mean, let's take Funny Girl for just a point. I mean, here, it hadn't been on Broadway in all these years. It received so much hype. And then when it opened, it's almost like all these daggers came out. And
she is a wonderful performer and a wonderful person, and she's getting a bad rap.
No, I saw her in Hello Dolly. She was loads of fun. Does a great job. She's not Barbra Streisand. No, but you can't expect that.
She does what she does. Also, she has a cover who sings the hell out of it.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Also have heard the cover, but Beanie's getting a bad rap. She is a very talented woman, but the critics can kill you. If the critics are bad to you, nobody will go, or people will believe them. The revival of Ragtime that was pared down and beautiful. It was a gem, and the critics killed it, and it closed. Yeah. So that's Broadway.
So I can't believe we've gone an hour. I just can't believe it.
Isola, I miss you.
I miss you too. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there in August. Are you going to be in New York in August?
In August, starting like August 10th, I'll be there.
Good. So we have to get together. We have to get together.
We'll do dinner. How's that? We'll do dinner. How's that?
Sounds great.
We'll find some nice Italian restaurant where you can eat lots of carbs, because people don't know that Isola is now preparing for her third life.
Well, okay. So this is what happened. So I injured this shoulder, and I went to a massage therapist, and the massage therapist said that your muscles are funny. And she said, you have to build up your muscles. And so I had a referral to, what is it, personal trainer. So I started lifting weights, and I started looking at my guns, and I like my guns. And so in October, I am going to be in a bodybuilding competition.
Oh, wow.
I'll be walking around the stage in dental floss. But it is, I'm on the right track. I'm seeing the transformation of my body. And I'm thinking, yes. So that's still 5 months out. So I can't have any carbs after 3 p.m.
Where will you train? No
I'm
carbs.
training here.
Oh, but I'm in New York. Where will you train?
When I'm in New York, I'll bring my stuff with me. I've got bands to do curls and to do stuff with, I'm not going to bring any weights. I've got these bands of different resistance. Did you want to see my,
I'm impressed. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yay, you. Yay, you. You know what else, Stephen, is kind of amazing, and I love this. It's been many, many, many years that we've known each other, and we still know each other.
Yeah.
And when we're together, that time that's in between just goes away.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really something to be said for that. Pat Craig feels that way, and Loretta, and I was with Batya the other day, and the time just goes away, and we're there together again. It's really beautiful.
I'm going to tell just very quick. I'm going to end this with this very quick story. How I met Isola. This is a good story. I had decided to do my graduate work at Arizona State University because I was also hired by Arizona Opera. So I decided, okay, I will go out there for a period of time. And then I wound up teaching there too, right? But I remember the first day that all the newbies go, we have to get our placement tests. So there I am standing in the hallway, and I see this woman in denim jeans and a denim jacket and this big hair. And I'm looking at her going, I know her. Where do I know her from? I couldn't remember. Talk about getting old. I mean, I couldn't remember where I knew her from. And I keep staring at her, and I could tell she's looking at me like, giving me the fisheye, and I'm going, she's going to think I'm crazy. She's going to think I'm a stalker. But I know her. Well, we all got into line and to go in, and I kind of maneuvered so I would be right behind her. So we had to enter and, sign in. So she went, she signed in, and she walked away, and I went and I looked down and I went, oh my God, it's Isola Jones. I couldn't believe it. And I walked over to her. I got down on one knee. She probably thought I wanted to propose or something. And I said to her, Miss Jones, I'm from New York. I said, and I think I've seen a lot of your performances. Plus, we have a mutual friend. And she said, who? I said, Joanne Grillo, because I knew Joanne Grillo. And by that point, Joanne had passed away also. And she was, oh my God. She said, we have to talk after this. So after our placements, we met in the hallway and we started to talk. And I don't think we've shut up since, because it's going on now, must be 10 or 11 years we know each other.
10 years.
10 years.
In the fall.
And she's like my sister. I feel very close to her. Of course, for a while, I didn't want to talk to her after that Carmen, but but now, I mean, she's also been very, and I'm sure, Claudia, you must feel this, when other people give you the confidence that you don't have, or you think you don't have, to go on and do things. She saw my conducting and she said, Stephen, you have to do this. I've worked with some of the best. You need to do this, because didn't have any confidence with that anymore. And she instills so much in people. And I am sure, Claudia, the way you do with your students, it's just something you two have that is so special. And I can't. To me, it's like walking here down memory lane.
I think we have a job when we get to be a certain age. Besides bodybuilding and singing great, we have a job to pass it on.
Yes.
To pass it on artistically, but also pass on the humanity. You know, there were so many people in my career that helped me, that were my colleagues. I would not have had a debut if it weren't for Gene Kraft. I would not have had an operatic debut if it weren't for Jim Morris. There are so many people who were there, who were singing, who were there. And it's we look on this, where the three of us are here, and we look out at all these people that we work with, but we're a small little group of people that are a family. And it's our job to pass it on. I really do believe.
But we definitely should all get together. This has been the most wonderful talk, and it was serious, it was fun, and very little fluff, and I love that. I absolutely love it.
I'm really excited to be with both of you. Thank you so much. I love you so much. I'll see you soon. I'll see you in August. I'll see you both in August.
Yes, and when you get back, make sure you're in touch so we can talk about the future, so we can work on some dates.
I will be. I will.
Okay,
be.
great.
Great idea. Bye.